Welcome to the December 15th Journal of Expressive Writing Open Mic. I'm Kelly Dumar. I'm your host, and I'm so delighted and excited to be welcoming tonight as our feature in poetry, Taté Walker, who has written her beautiful collection, Trickster Riots, that she's going to be reading from tonight, as well as maybe some other poems. And I want to remind all of you that we will be having a Q&A just after Taté's reading. So please feel free to put any question you have into the chat room, and I will do my best to look at those questions and ask those questions as I can during the discussion. Also, please feel free to put into the chat room any comments, appreciations. We keep it open all night. We're always happy to have you all sharing with each other what it's like to be here tonight in this open mic and in this community that we make for poetry and storytelling. I like to find a poem in advance that I'm going to read just to gather us here in this space together. And tonight I have chosen a poem by Jan Richardson called Blessing in the Chaos. To all that is chaotic in you, let there come silence. Let there be a calming of the clamoring, a stilling of the voices that have laid their claim on you, that have made their home in you, that go with you even to the holy places, but will not let you rest, will not let you hear your life with wholeness or feel the grace that fashioned you. Let what distracts you cease. Let what divides you cease. Let there come an end to what diminishes and demeans, and let depart all that keeps you in its cage. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos, where you find the peace you did not think possible, and see what shimmers within the storm. I'm really excited, been looking forward to Taté's reading here for some time. And I want to give a little bit of an introduction before I turn the mic over to her to read. Layli Long Soldier is one of the poets who has praised Taté's book, The Trickster Riots. She writes, "This book embodies what a treaty-honored world might be: collaboration between parents and children, truthfulness, purpose, cultural grounding, humor and playfulness, intelligence, and continual respect for who and where we come from." Walker dedicates this to queer Indigenous youth, and make no mistake, these poems do not underestimate the high level of critical thinking and insight of our youth today. Taté's biography is that she is a Lakota citizen of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe of South Dakota. They are an award-winning two-spirit storyteller for outlets like The Nation, Pipe Wrench, Apartment Therapy, Subaru Drive, Everyday Feminism, Native Peoples, Indian Country Today, and I think it's Anomaly, ANMLY. They are also featured in several anthologies: Fierce, Essays by and about Dauntless Women, South Dakota in Poems; W.W. Norton's Everyone's an Author and the Languages of Our Love, an Indigenous Love and Sex Anthology. That's forthcoming, maybe published already, summer 22. Their first full-length poetry book, The Trickster Riots, was published in June 1st by Abalone Mountain Press. Taté uses their 15 plus years of experience working for daily newspapers, social justice organizations, and tribal education systems to organize students and professionals around issues of critical cultural competency, anti-racism, anti-bias, and inclusive community building. their book was illustrated by Ohia Walker. And I think that Taté will tell us a little bit more about Ohia as the evening goes on. And one other thing I think I want to add to this introduction is something that Taté said in an interview. Being two-spirit and being a storyteller are one and the same. They are inseparable. Through a lot of deep ceremonial work with Lakota elders, relatives, and community, I was recognized as Winyan Witko, which has its own literal translation, but boils down to two-spirit. My relations recognized that I had medicine to share directly tied to storytelling, journalism, and the experiences and perspectives I have being queer. With the release of the Trickster Riots, they have been traveling throughout the Valley and the US to perform in a slam poetry style the works about Iktumi, the Lakota trickster who takes shape as a spider. With that, I really want to welcome you, Taté, and we look forward to hearing your reading tonight. And if I mispronounced anything, and I'm pretty sure I did, I know you'll correct it.
Wopila Kelly, thank you so much. And you did a great job pronouncing. I'm still learning myself. Lakota is one of those phonetic audio languages, so nothing's really written down. It's how your elders say it, and a lot of elders say things differently. So I'm gonna let you be an elder tonight, Kelly. And thank you, Jen, and the Journal of Expressive Writing for letting me be here today. I'm super excited. Have to give a shout out to my ina, my mom, who really made this connection happen. So it's and there she's here tonight, so really appreciate that. Yes, Wopila Tanka, Chante Washte Yuha Nampechuja Pikasto, Jisha Tatewe Machiapi, Wakpa Washte Amantahan. And that's my Lakota greeting. It's lets me ground myself in who I am as a Lakota person, and let you know too, yeah, my pronouns are they, them. So if you're gonna reference me, she, her is inaccurate. So they, them is great, unless you're Lakota and you wanna say that I'm your unchi or inala or ina. Those are feminine pronouns in Lakota, but that's also like a role responsibility piece. So I would totally welcome those. Yeah, I'm so jazzed about this book. It's done some really cool things, none the least of which is really strengthened my relationship with my kiddo, Ohia. They came out as trans non-binary a couple of years ago, before this book was even a thought. And as we grew in our relationship as mom, kiddo, so too did this poetry book, and they illustrated the whole thing. So, and what's really cool is as they've been, as this book has been making the rounds, their artwork has too. And they recently got second place in an art market here in the Valley at the Pueblo Grande Indian Art Market for one of their drawings, and then took first place in a national contest through the Bureau of Indian Education for another of the poems, the one that Lily Long Soldier was actually referencing, the Critical Remembrance poem. And so I have yet to win any poetry awards, but my kiddos' illustrations are getting really good recognition here. So but yeah, I'm gonna be reading a couple poems for you today, and I'm gonna start with a poem that actually was one of the first I had ever performed live. I'm a journalist by trade. Poetry really never made it into my peripheral until a couple of years ago. Someone found a blog. I don't know if you guys remember those things, but I had a poem on a blog that some folks had seen, and folks other than my mom, I guess, no, and wanted me to read it aloud. And so I did, and then they started asking me to write for specific events. And there's in December, there tends to be a lot of trauma associated with being Native. A lot of Native tribes have massacres in their histories, and it's can be really tough. Right now, my people are riding to Mankato for the Dakota 38+2 ride to remember that massacre at the hands of Abraham Lincoln, a lot of people's favorite presidents, but one of the people who committed the largest mass hanging in US history of the Dakota people, who were more or less just trying to feed themselves. And so this poem, just to bring everyone down, right? Now, I'm going to read some happy stuff later, but I always want to ground it, especially with this month in particular, with this poem. It's called Root My Heart at Wounded Knee, and it's to memorialize the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890, which took place December 26th, 1890. So here we go. I feel them falling upon my surface like snowflakes. The bullets take their lives, each unique, they melt, and their hearts return to me, Wounded Knee. I try to be a soft place to land, but the land is closed for the season of white, colonizing my every curve and crevice. Their menace leaves me bruised, abused, scarred. I am a deathbed for these hearts I hold like fruit, forced too soon from the tree atop Wounded Knee. I measure this time as a singer at a drum, wailing to the sound of so many thumps, no rhythm, just the echo of broken promises on ice, a dream heist set to a savage soundtrack with a Hotchkiss bass beat. And they sing, give up your land and we won't kill you. Live on this reservation and we won't kill you. Stop dancing, stop singing, and we won't kill you. We won't kill you. We won't kill you. A viciously victorious dirge they dedicate to my relatives who flee, Wounded Knee. Such entreaties make it easy for Wasichu, the fat takers, to see lives like lands and resource extraction becomes target practice on the bodies of those who only want to protect me. Survival is the priority. You throw your hands up, wave a white flag, and hope surrender doesn't make you an easier mark. Now the Otedi Shakowi are slowly dying of survival. The denial of life stains the frozen ground like a smear of war paint across the bloody Wounded Knee. Sometime later, my frozen arms are pried open, inch by inch, 6 feet, 300 bodies, the stink of destinies and doctrines and discoveries and fear fuels the digging. A grave seems to be the only place Indigenous people are allowed to gather en masse, in massacre, interred. The Wasichu give their promises back to the Lakota and bodies back to me, Wounded Knee. I accept this forced sacrifice as a gift. The Pateoyate are returning home, not alone, but accompanied by scars and wounds, each a prayer on skin the same shades of my warm hills and prairies, skin that's marked and tells me they've lived lives worth fighting for. And my brother, the creator, will know them all as worthy of rest. They fill me with death and in death, life. I turn to their waiting spirits above, and I say through the crisp winter air, rejoice, relatives, for your bodies are welcome below. Return your spirits to the stars and watch this ultimate offering fertilize the next 7 generations. Their hearts sink into me, not buried, but composted, soiled beauty under Wounded Knee. My earth blankets these bodies. I smile to myself as I tuck them in. The enemy doesn't understand, can't understand that they sow the seeds of resistance, a persistent force that will never remain buried. For I know the slow, steady ways of the root, an unceasing underground ceremony, a spreading memory planted anew, blooming resistance, counting coup, and screaming into the face of white supremacy. My dream is older than America and will be here long after. So I will hold these hearts like I hold all sacred seeds and watch their roots grow to one day grasp hold of all that's been settled, returning the invasive burdens, like all decaying things, to me, Wounded Knee. Thank you. Just want to show some images here that were used. So some illustrations This is Calvary glove that's sort of spraying some tricksters around here. Iktomi. Ikto is the trickster deity in Lakota. Iktomi is, the literal translation is spider, and so used as a many here. And then and if you Google Wounded Knee, like there's an image there of this mass grave. It's often touted out every year on December 26th when the media starts remembering that we exist. And they tend to show that a lot. It's pretty terrible, actually. This is the medal of honor that many of those cavalry folks were awarded and never rescinded, by the way, for that massacre. It's a tough one, but I also want to note too that in my book, I really was purposeful and intentional about not leaving the reader with hopelessness. I hope if you listen to the poem, you were left with this idea that while this tragedy happened, there's so much more hope left, right? And as a mom, that's really important to me. I need to see our people, especially the next 7 generations, not just surviving, but thriving, right? Like it's cool if you're surviving, right? Like, oh, good, you survived, but like, I need my kid to thrive, right? I don't want them to just sit there and be like, look, I survived today. I need them to be happy and smiling and knowing that they can continue. Not that that happens all the time, but just the idea of there's a future, right? So each of the poems will end with a sort of spin of the positive. A lot of poetry doesn't do that. I have many journals full of very depressing poetry, but that's not what I want to publish. That's not what I want young people to be left with when they read my stuff. So I'm gonna continue on with maybe a little bit more lighthearted poem here, and it sort of follows who I am. Maybe gives you a little bit more idea of who Taté is and what I'm going for. This one is a 3-part poem about my name, and it starts with, my name is Taté. Part 1. That's weird. Say it one more time. I thought you said Katie. Is it short for Tatiana? Tater tot. Ha. Rhymes with latte. But you're like really Johnny though, right? Toddy. Tade. Ta. There's an accent? There's an E? So it's actually Tate. Whatever, it sounds made up. Because you're so extra. It's hard to type. Is Tate so bad? Tate isn't technically a misspelling. Jose and Chloe are actual names, though. Get over it. Part 2. I like your accent. This goes out to all the folks with names too thick and too sticky for colonized tongues to dominate. To those with names rejected by baby books and gas station keychains, and whose name is always spelled wrong on the invitation. This goes out to the folks with names that fill uninitiated mouths full of too many inconvenient syllables, so you learn to answer to extended heys. To those with names no one ever confuses with the Sarahs and Shans with an H that never makes teachers stumble. To those who experience roll call anxiety and get strangled with nicknames from playground bullies. This goes out to the folks with delicacy names like choking hazards. So they cut you down to bite size and mix you with raisins and mayonnaise and drop pieces of you like crumbs to find their way back to mediocrity. To those with names translated into something more palatable for people who think ketchup is spicy, but can pronounce Shorsa, Joaquin, and Charlize with perfect emphasized love. This goes out to the folks with names that get fumbled and dropped in the mud, only to be carelessly swept under a basic rug and whitewashed into a sobriquet or judged too difficult and sent to the do not hire bin. To those with names too exotic for ignorant ears, too lazy to interrupt their status quo convos. To those with names accented with a symphony of notes out of range to the tone oblivious, so you get remixed with dead air in concert halls of generic white noise. Remember, your sticky thickness tastes like honey to the ones who named you, your mysteries admired and adored without translation. Remember, no trendy trinket will ever hold up to the timelessness of the alphabet your ancestors recognize. Remember to enjoy the awkward blunders of the person across from you suddenly forced to pay more attention to a name that has survived eons of oceans, explorers, walls, wars, conquistadors, settlers, genocide, the gender binary, and public schools. Make them carry the weight of your name on a tongue that's done little to no heavy lifting. Ours are names that stretch the imagination and lay the foundation to understanding who we are and where we belong. We are not Shakespearean roses to be called just anything. Anyone lacking the perseverance to pronounce and spell with humble accuracy expose themselves as undeserving of your truest magic. Our names demand accountability, deserve practice, and exude prayer. Our names are fields of immemorial beauty seeded with story and song. Ours are the names of ceremony between the lips and the breath that created them, and especially if we created them ourselves. Your delicious honey name reminds the mouth how sweet decolonized lips taste when animated by totemic fluency. A dancing name full of vitality and memory. It's worth noted in every digraph and glottal stop, a trove of diacritical treasures only the worthy can find. Part 3, Taté Imachiapi. They call me Taté, the Lakota messenger god of wind, commanding the 4 directions, mother, partner, a good relative. Mine is a hard-earned title sparkling with two-spirit responsibility. Mine honors my mini Konju Lakota Tioshpaye, a nod to the stardust in my veins, a shout out to the Milky Way ancestors. Taté is a braid tightened with the lyrical roundness of Great Plains dynastic vowels and the sacred medicine of the prairie's punctuated consonants. My name is Taté, and there's an accent on the E. Thank you. I think that probably brings me into the 15 minutes I had allotted, but I have lots more if they're interested.
Definitely interested. Give us a couple more, Taté. That wasn't that long.
Okay. I tend to be more of a storyteller in my poems. They can run kind of long. I'll do a fun one. It's a pretty cool actually story with this. So couple months ago, I was invited to be part of the South Dakota Festival of Books, which is fantastic. It was my first time really coming back home for anything. I travel quite a bit for not just, well, travel a bit for poetry now, but in the past I've been asked to be a consultant regarding lots of Indigenous and Lakota specific cultural competency issues. And which is fun, great. But South Dakota never wanted me back. They were like, nah, you're fine. So with the poems, I've now been back to South Dakota 3 different times, just this season, really. So that's been really cool. And so when I was back in South Dakota for the Festival of Books, my mom and my aunties and my sister and my nephew came, and a lot of friends too, but it was really cool to have my aunties and my mom there. That was the first time they've really heard me do any live performance like that. And so I read this one, and it was very validating because, you know, you can write a poem and talk about, you know, oh, natives, long hair, blah, but there's a couple pieces in here that are meant to make you, it's supposed to be funny, right? And to have my aunties in the back, like doing their like cackling in the background, it was very like, all right, this is good stuff. So I'm trying to find it here though. Let's see. It is The Sovereignty of Humor. And okay. There's an expression with many uses and many meanings. It's more than a word, more than a sound. In every utterance, it evokes fun. It's a jab, a punchline, a joke unto itself. It's verbal currency, better than a passport, a priceless family heirloom, and the maker of relatives. In grade school, we learned about American Indians, or at least the stoic Edward Curtis version of how Indians were supposed to look. The vanishing race, a people sad and depressed and all but extinct. We could be vicious too, in movies and history books, but always we were defeated, and no one wants to be on the losing side. These images, these stereotypes of an ever frowning people contrast sharply with the laughter and jokes of the Tioshbe I grew up with. Sure, there are low moments like down to the last dollar and oh my God, call the police low, but in all that we find reasons to smile, reasons to cheese out, commode style. And that's the thing about Native humor. It's kept us alive. And all that that sound represents isn't just for entertainment. It's an endurance tactic, like air, water, food, and shelter. Our people need humor to thrive. Recognizes what we've survived together. It's a sorry, not sorry testament to shouldering the crushing weight of poverty, genocide, diabetes, boarding schools, massacres, addiction, and Disney's Pocahontas. Without the protective armor of Indian humor, we'd be dead inside. Indian humor says, not today, colonizer. Hey. Indian humor reclaims the life hate and fear and manifest destiny have tried to remove and assimilate. Resistance is only futile if you can't laugh about it later. Because you realize a belly jiggling guffaw pulls you up better than any philosophical bootstrap. Indian humor recognizes the irony in celebrating code talkers who saved World War II with the same languages their country tried to beat out of them as kids, and the irony in denying voting rights to the people who had land stolen and treaties broken to form a democracy modeled after the Constitution of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Indian humor mocks those who say racist mascots are an honor as they whoop and chant like the tomahawk-wielding savage their own ancestors killed. Indian humor mocks the stupidity of white Hollywood saviors like Kevin Costner's wolf-waltzing John Dunbar and Johnny Depp's taxidermically adorned Tonto. Indian humor mocks every claim to Cherokee royalty that conveniently ignores Cherokee's struggle. Indian humor mocks the ridiculous disrespect of hipster headdresses. Yes, those hot pink chicken feathers sure are secret. Get over it, you say. Trust us. We're so over it. It's you that can't seem to let go of our identity. Indian humor winks at the camera when Native women overtake. Try that again. Indian humor winks at the camera when Native women overtake the same government systems that refuse to protect them from going missing and murdered. And winks again when the same face masks police ripped off protectors at Standing Rock must now be worn to save lives from a virus fueled by climate change. Keep wearing them, guys. Indian humor is dark hair thick with greasy secrets you wish you knew, and cheekbones that can cut down bad spirits. Hey. It's your grandma's squinty, tear-filled eyes and soft, wrinkled hand covering her toothless grin. It's your sister's head thrown back, a gut-busting cackle spewing from her defiant smile as she slaps your arm hard. Indian humor is your uncle teasing you relentlessly with love-filled lessons, and you eventually learn the joke is on your ego, so be humble, damn it. Indian humor reminds anyone who forgets, we're still here. It builds up the next generations and tells them at every opportunity not to turn back, but to keep going into the future. Indian humor is a sovereign act, and our laughter is medicine. It's the battle cry of aunties everywhere. Say it with me. I can't really say it, but hey. That's definitely much better in person. So, yeah, that's it gives me a lot of good boost, especially remembering my aunties back there doing everything I just said, juggling their mouth. So hopefully that brought a smile to your face, and maybe you have a family that maybe does some of those things. The more I give my poetry readings around the country, the more I realize there's a lot of stuff that connects us culturally across, beyond just being Indigenous. And so it's been pretty magical to have people say, my auntie does that too. So thank you very much. Did we want another one, or I don't know? I can read all day.
Yeah, give us one more. Give us one more, please.
How about a new one? I actually just wrote this for there's gonna be an art installation Saturday in Phoenix. It's charting the monarch butterflies life cycle, and it's sort of an homage to border crossing, the anti-border theme, I guess. And so I'm going to be reading, my piece is about the stage of like post chrysalis, so the metamorphosis and emergence stage. And so I'm pretty excited about this, actually. I haven't necessarily written a whole lot of new stuff, and this one, this piece really called to me, I guess. It's called The Song of the Butterfly. I see you crawling in a body that consumes expectation, filling itself full to bursting with beautiful plastic lies, heavy and grounding and confusing. Why can't I accept this body, you ask? Why am I goo, a mess inside? Why am I not normal? The body they want you to have is an unattainable ideal, I say, a stale, off-key lament of mediocrity to those of us who sing the song of the butterfly. But I am only this body, you say. What more is there when my choices are stolen and made for me, cycle after cycle, generation after generation? Listen, I say, what does your body tell you about your heart? Your blood carries ancestral medicine melodies, a universe of notes beyond binaries, immemorial Kamimila magic, cocooning you within a starlight silk blanket, hugging you tight, tight, tight. Can you hear it unsettling the settled, the song of the butterfly? I'm scared, you say. I don't know what happens in the dark. This battleground body is riddled with barroom bullets made of leaden laws, conversioning our half-mast hearts to ash. I fear this chrysalis is a colonial classroom, a closet, a coffin. And I say, your rainbow joy threatens the weak and bland. They cannot fathom life without status quo allotments. They covet your possibilities, your metamorphosis with bigotry and hate. They seek to plant graves in your growing garden. Their dirges troll Sunday services and comment sections with a cacophony of turfy word vomit. Their ignorant ears yearning but unable to comprehend the song of the butterfly. And I say, your chrysalis is a black hole, yes, but it's a portal, not a prison. You are protected here. I have found life in the places left for dead, and you will too. Lean into the unknown. Let yourself be filled with its energy. Time does not exist here. Only the moon and the sun and seasons of transformation. Set to a queer rhythm and pulse, this blooming crescendo inside you is the song of the butterfly. Rage and dance. Come out, come out, come out. You are transformed. Stardust DNA forged in fire, you emerge a blaze of orange and black and white, gentle and furious and uncompromised against that which seeks to cage you within imaginary, toneless borders. Find your kin and community, dine on the milk and nectar of a well-lived life. Salt the earth with your sweat and tears made of love and laughter and ceremony. I will fight for you, thrive for me, sing for me always, the song of the butterfly. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Taté. That was really a very wonderful reading. Oh, my goodness. I know our audience is appreciating it as much as...
No, I want to go through the comments. I keep seeing stuff. Like, what do they say?
I know you're gonna have
my ADHD's like my my Adderall's gone by now in this time of day.
Well, you're gonna have your chance. But I want to ask a couple of questions too.
Of course.
Also, there are a couple in the chat room, but beautiful performance of amazingly thoughtful and beautifully expressed writing. I wanted to ask if you might say something about because I didn't understand what this was referencing in your bio, two-spirit storyteller. So I imagine others in the audience would love to know a little bit more about what that means, about your identity. And would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. How much time I got? I actually give a full workshop and compliment of what two-spirit is. Quickish hit. In the 1990s, actually 1990, a group of queer natives got together and decided, essentially, we need a space for ourselves within the queer community. There are issues and things we experience that are beyond LGBT+++. Part of it, of course, a lot of it has to do with, this is our land, right? And we experience genocide and oppression here that go beyond what other folks might experience. And so with two-spirit, that's the recognition that, and it's only for Indigenous queer folks, the recognition that we have a responsibility within our communities as queer people. So with that context in mind, you can be Indigenous and queer and not two-spirit. Two-spirit is only for Indigenous folks who would have that in their communities. When I first heard of this concept as a baby queer, I was like, oh great, so I'm two-spirit. And then speaking with elders who were queer, two-spirit elders, they were like, no, sit down. This is something you earn. This is something that your community will gift you. They're in Lakota, we exalted and uplifted queer folks who had roles to play and responsibilities that they provided to the community all across the board too. It wasn't just like a marriage counselor or a medicine person. They were teachers, they were hunters and gatherers, whatever it was. But this medicine was considered unique and special to the queer folks in the community, and that went beyond the boxes to check, right? That went beyond alphabet soup. There was very little to do with like who you had sex with, right? It was about the medicine you were sharing. So when I went through ceremony, and this is unique to each person, of course, and not necessarily something we will divulge step by step, but a many months, years long process of just even coming to the point of being able to do ceremony. You have to be sober, right? You can't have drug and alcohol. And this is for a year, a full year I had to go. And I've been sober now almost 10 years, but at the time this was college. So that was a big deal for me. And then with that, after performing ceremony, which is always done for community, it's not an internal thing. In the book, or in the poem, Root My Heart at Wounded Knee, there's a section in there about the scars that our people have on their skin. And that's sort of a nod to the ceremony that we do. There's a self-sacrifice that happens that's always given for the people. It's not a like, look what I did so that I can move on to the next thing. It's, I have given part of myself so that my people are going to thrive, not me. The we before me, if you will. So, and that's a pretty fundamental aspect of Lakota philosophy, and just a community building. So two-spirit for me is that element. I identify as queer, which can be, when I was first coming out, I didn't know what two-spirit was. I didn't know words like non-binary or bisexual. I just knew I liked a girl. So I was like, I'm a lesbian, right? So, and this is in North Dakota, and that didn't go very well. And so as I've been growing with this identity, this part of myself, I find more of my identity within the Lakota aspect, right? While there's a lot of language and literature and Western concepts of queerness, especially now, the things that we're talking about now, amazing, right? So, my kiddo coming out, it's a lot, there's a lot more things to be able to tell them about than I had, right? It was, we were very underground even in the late 90s. So, with Lakota, especially, but also here in the Southwest, a lot of Southwest tribes have fantastic understanding of queerness within their own cultures. And so being surrounded by that piece is there's more of that thrivance I talk about when we can connect to our cultural understandings of queerness. And that's what Two-Spirit is.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a mouthful of a lot of beautiful explanation. So thank you for letting us in on your perspective on that. There's a few questions in the chat room, so I do want to get to those. Susan Villardo asks, have you always been supported and encouraged for your writing, even during your youth?
That's a good question. So my mom's here and will tell you that, and I have vivid memories of having, those little notebooks and like writing stories for her. I think there were lots of like fantastical fantasy, like, and poetry was always, I remember going to the dollar store when I was probably 6 or 7, and I picked up this cheap little red book. I still have it actually, and read that through and just fell in love with the rhyme. It was very Seussical, every other line kind of thing. But it was a really easy way to sort of grasp language. And when I would memorize them for class, like I kind of had like a boost when the teachers were like, wow, you know poetry. And I was like, yes, I do. And so I enjoyed writing for myself, maybe doing some storytelling in that way. But in high school, I was in AP English and I wasn't doing very well. This is post coming out and then going back in as a queer kid. And I should put a caveat here and say I wasn't raised with my mom full-time. My parents were divorced, ugly thing. And so I lived with my dad in high school. And so when I say my parents weren't very accepting, that's what I mean. And then so my mother's very accepting. I love my mom, but that took a while for us to build that relationship. So when I came out, that wasn't very good. So I'm in high school, not doing very well, and I'm writing this poem. And I remember just as I wrote it, was just like, oh, this is all of me in this one poem, and everyone's gonna just understand where I'm coming from. And I just felt really like good about it. And I read it in front of my class, and my teacher just destroyed it. It was just like, that's trash. That's not the assignment at all. You didn't follow any of the rules of iambic pentameter, blah, blah, blah. Like, I remember that vividly, like iambic pentameter. And I was like, well, I read it in iambic pentameter, but apparently that was enough. Anyway, and so it destroyed me. Like, I remember just being like, oh, just really, like, I'll never write again. And so but that was, I mean, never write poetry again, I guess. So I only ever really did poetry. I mean, that was 2000, and then maybe about 2000, 2001, and then flash forward to 2012. It was really the next time I really wrote anything, and that was the blog I was talking about. That was when The Lone Ranger and Tonto was coming out, and people kept asking, what do you think, Taté? And I was like, it's trash. I hate it, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't think of anything like eloquent to say that I hadn't already said. And so I wrote a poem called F.U. Kimosabe, which is actually in here. And overnight it went viral, like millions of views, kind of viral. And so that was 2012. And I really didn't write poetry after that. And then 2019 was when that blog was kind of resurfaced, and people were like, write for us for this. So yes and no supported in my writing. I think now my style is more in the performance zone. So when you see me live, I do a lot of body stuff. I'm talking to the audience, and I think people really respond to that, especially post-COVID. Coming together with poetry has been really a healing space, I think. And that's kind of the vibe I get when I do these readings, which I love. And also just hearing people connect with just these really emotional stances. Like, yeah. I don't know, there's something magical that happens that can't happen with something like journalism, which is my background, or even just prose or just fiction or whatever, you know what I mean? So like, yes. Poetry space is such a magical part of who I am now, and I'm so grateful for it.
And it's evident in the chat room too, as I think when you look at some of the comments, I think you'll sense that. So there are a couple of questions that I'm not going to be able to get to that are in the chat room. You can answer if you feel like it when you have a chance to look at it, because I feel like wrapping up, I want to mention this line that I think really, there was a few lines and a few things jotted down, but for some reason, I think this is important for me to want to just address, to bring out this line and emphasize. You wrote, "I try to be a soft place to land." And that was such a wonderful line. I wonder if it's, I know that this is a persona book in a way, the Trickster Riots, but I'm wondering if you have any comment about that line and where it comes from for you.
So that whole POV is Wounded Knee talking to us, right? So the land is giving us this perspective, and a soft place to land. I mean, it's the winter time, and it's actually, it's not even freezing out. So the pictures we get of the Wounded Knee massacre are post-massacre, when it did snow and did freeze over. But it was actually during that time actually pretty warm. I mean, my people, the Mini Kanju, were coming from a couple hundred miles away to Wounded Knee, the place, and I mean, so it had to have been a little bit warm. And so and this poem was written as part of a exhibit that really explored Wounded Knee as a whole. It was Dakue, why it was the exhibit. And so we each took a section anyway. And so Soft Place to Land sort of recognizes you know, the land being accepting of the folks, but the next line, of course, is but the land is closed. It's I mean, we're being colonized. I mean, this land wasn't open to us as our own land, right? And the land is calling for her people, and unable to embrace them until her arms are pulled apart in the frozen earth. Yeah, so I mean, that was really where it comes from, is Wounded Knee wants to help her people, always.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. We're giving away tonight 4 copies of Trickster Riots. So for people who stay on, Jen will pick names randomly out of the hat to, we will mail you. Journal of Expressive Writing is donating these, and we will mail them to you. But I want to maybe just put that out as an opportunity for anyone who is here tonight to purchase copies of this book to give away. And that this is really part of, I think, what the book was created for, was to be out there in the world and to be sharing these stories. And if there are ways that, if you have things coming up where you're going to be speaking and presenting and things, make sure we get all the details in the chat room about that. So if people want to to purchase more copies, it's at Abalone Press. We'll be putting all these links into the chat room if Jen hasn't already. But maybe for the holiday season, one thing to think about is how to get more copies of this book into people's hands, and how to get Taté's voice more out there. Your performance is fabulous, and we're just really honored to have had you here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's truly been an honor.
I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording now.